Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan. And in this episode, I'll be looking at a rather ridiculous article that's just popped up this afternoon on the SNP's official website. And in it declares they've had a year of progress on Humza and they celebrate his first year in office. Regular viewers to the channel will be well aware that yesterday, I do believe Monday, I done a similar video. But I celebrated Humza's one and only positive from his first year in office. I'll put the link to that towards the end. Let me just read through the SNP's release and give you the unspun version of the buzzword-filled release. So it says, on the 1-year anniversary of Humza Yousaf becoming SNP leader and First Minister of Scotland, we look back at the tumultuous year. Despite deeply challenging circumstances, the First Minister has proven that the SNP can and will continue to defy the constraints of devolution to build a fairer Scotland. Well, that's interesting, because what they're saying is they can do this with the constraints of devolution, whereas up until now we've heard that because of the constraints of devolution and they're hindered by Westminster, that they can't build a better Scotland. You know, it's always Westminster's fault. But here they're saying that they can continue to defy the constraints to build a fairer Scotland. That's an interesting change of tactic. It goes on. The SNP Scottish Government has centred its approach around the principles of equality, opportunity and community. That's where we are thoroughly committed to fighting poverty, improving Scotland's public services, protecting our environment and building a greener, fairer economy. I doubt the last sentence would have been there if they didn't need the Greens to give them a coalition of power. Here's all you need to know about Humza Yousaf's first year as a First Minister. I doubt it will be. However, reducing poverty, helping families and fighting Westminster's cost of living crisis. The game-changing Scottish Child Payment is supporting well over 300,000 children, making a transformative difference in demonstrating the SNP's Scottish Government's commitment to mitigating the worst impacts of Tory austerity. You'll hear that word Tory in a lot of them, these things that I'm about to read. The latest estimates suggest 100,000 children could be lifted out of poverty by the end of 2024, thanks to the Scottish Child Payment. Now, this is the first item suggesting that Humza's had a great year by talking about something that had nothing to do with Humza and telling you the number that might be attained by the end of this year, where his first year of power was March 23 to March 24. Hardly a good start. However, the First Minister tripled the Fuel Insecurity Fund to £30 million in his first 100 days, helping to protect families across Scotland with the pressures of soaring energy cost inflicted by this Tory cost of living crisis. So, these things that are affected by the whole world aren't anybody else's fault apart from Tory. And we go on to talk about fuel costs when his predecessor pawned the offshore, or the majority of the offshore wind turbine leases for the paltry sum of £750 million. If you'd privatised that, as many thought and believe we are going to do, that would have had a far better impact in energy costs. We chose not to do that. The SNP government have announced a funded council tax freeze to alleviate the pressures on family finances already stretched to breaking point as a direct result of Tory mistakes. Right, so here we go. We're talking about this thing that Humza made up off the cuff at the party conference when he had no good news and just said, we'll freeze council tax. So now what they're saying is they're funding an apparent rise by giving the councils more money, which means, you know, we have wooden dollars in the parliament, so something else has got to give. But let's forget all that. And just remember that the council tax has been frozen. During Humza's short tenure, Scotland saw a record number of affordable housing completions. This is a belter. In the latest year to end September 2023, the number of affordable homes completed was increased by 9% and a total of 15,765 affordable homes have been completed between March 2022 and September 2023. In that 18-month period, Humza was there for 6 months. But we'll give him plaudits for that. In May 23, the First Minister chaired a cross-party anti-poverty summit and committed to future Scottish Government targeting the poorest and most vulnerable in society. That's absolutely fantastic. That, taking the spin off, it means he spoke about something in May 23. He's not done anything. He just made a commitment. Okay. The earliest weeks of the First Minister's announcement, an additional £15 million to support families with free school-age childcare. That's fantastic. That maybe came out the fund for the free computers that they never got. You know, remember that? Carry on. Here we are. Anyway, security now in another heading. Securing Scotland's future with a fairer, greener and thriving economy. The green word popped in to keep their pals happy. In his first 100 days, the First Minister pledged £17.5 million to help establish Scotland as one of Europe's leading start-up economies, because a strong and thriving economy is central to Scotland becoming that welfare, fairer country that we all want to see. Okay, so how much money did we have for start-ups the year before? I would love to know, because then we can say that's a good thing or a bad thing. But just to tell us how much you put in this year, and don't mention how much we had last year, kind of doesn't prove anything. The SNP Scottish Government published a national innovation strategy to make Scotland one of the most innovative small countries in the world, defying the constraints of devolution. There we go again. Attracting business interests from across the globe. So we published a paper. We didn't do anything. We printed a paper. Nothing's happened. We're not one of the most innovative small countries in the world, but we produced a paper on it. Well done, Humza. You're some man. Humza Yousaf's government is releasing Scotland's manufacturing potential by driving economic prosperity through Scotland's own National Manufacturing Institute, which resulted in nothing. Well, they've not told us. This is just going to happen. The First Minister and his cabinet are working with our dynamic businesses in Scotland to ensure they have room to build and grow, establishing a new deal for business to strengthen collaboration between government and private sector. Again, not done anything, but we're working with them. Okay, so what have you produced? Zero figures on there, but that's all right. At the SNP's national conference, the First Minister announced a Scottish bond proving Scotland can punch well above our weight and underlying the Scottish Government's aim to attract investors and financiers from across the world to see Scotland as a place to do business. Okay, again, he's just announced something. But this is one of these mad things that we can't do anything. We can't prosper with the rules we've got because Westminster's bad and we need independence. Yet, here's a great example of something we could have been doing for the last 17 years. Okay? But again, we've not done anything. We've just said something at a conference. And well done, Humza. You said a few things this year. Humza Yousaf has forensically criticised the nature of the UK's broken economic model, an outdated and creaking system that has driven down living standards, deterring investment and hampering productivity, while Labour and Tories double down on their devotion to this orthodox Thatcherism. Oh no, she said Thatcherism, that must be bad, so let's just buzzword herself. The SNP is proudly the party of progress. In just March of this year, that was like a couple of weeks ago, the First Minister gave a landmark speech to the London School of Economics, where he's called for a shift away from Westminster's policies of economic stagnation. There you go again, he said some things. And what? Right, so we've got loads of things he said in the first year. Let's celebrate because Humza says lots of things, right? And he produces papers. There you are. The Scottish Government has rightly argued against the Tories and Labour's reckless economic plans, including tax cuts for the richest and the windfall tax that would punish Scotland's economy and drive up the bills, Scottish family, all to build nuclear power stations in England. Imagine if you'd have said, we'll build one. No, because you can't, because you need the Greens. And the Greens have said, we don't do nuclear. So the SNP jumped on that we don't do nuclear bandwagon and had no chance of attracting any money to build a nuclear power station that get built in England. Well done, Humza. You're an absolute legend, son. Next section, protecting our environment and tackling the climate crisis. What a bollocks. And if you didn't need the Greens, this whole section wouldn't be here. but there's a few laughs in here. Scotland was among the first countries in the world to declare a climate emergency. Our unwavering mission to tackle climate change remains at the heart of the SNP Scottish Government's vision for Scotland's just transition. Right, so what have you done all this time if you were one of the first in the world to jump on the American theory that there's climate emergency? Right, right, and again, what's this got to do with Humza? You didn't do it in the last 12 months, but we'll put it in a paper telling everybody. So the bit with the Greens and tackling climate crisis and a thing telling us how good Humza's been is totally irrelevant because, like, you made this thing, the declaration, years ago. The Scottish Government has invested $25 million to support the just transition across the North East, delivering on our vow to make the region a powerhouse of renewable energy and a transition away from fossil fuels. So there we go, we're coming away from fossil fuels. Mind that thing that in 2014 was going to drive our independence, but they forgot all about it. No, we didn't say that. We never said anything about oil. All that bollocks, right? So now they need the Greens. Fossil fuels now a bad thing. And the renewable energy is going to transform the North East. And all this money that the North East is going to lose if they stop producing oil is going to come from renewable energy. Two things. We've pawned it, right? I've already discussed. We pawned it for 750 million and we gave all the leases to foreign companies. Some of them even foreign countries, national energy companies, owned by their country, no ours, right? That's how clever the SNP are. But this renewable energy is going to give this judge transition. It's just a buzzword. And Humza Yousaf's government is also committed, there's that word again, committed to designating at least one new national park in Scotland by 2026. We're maybe celebrating what you done in the first year, know what you might do in the next two. Crackpot. £5 million use folk pay spin doctors to come up with this pish. This is meant to be a thing about how good jumps this first 12 months, and we're talking about maybe having a national park in 2 years' time. The Scottish Government has pledged £7 million to be invested in projects aimed to drive innovation in the production, storage and distribution of renewable hydrogen. Wow, that'll set us a fucking right up the world ladder in renewable hydrogen, this £7 million. Get a break. In April 23, the Scottish Government announced delivery is ongoing of projects for year one of the Just Transition Fund. Backed by $50 million of multi-year capital grant funding, including a skills passport for offshore energy workers, work to develop supply chain pathways, promotion of energy emerging technologies, and investment in the community projects like eco-villages and local climate assemblies. That's fantastic. All these poor folk that work offshore, tens of thousands of them, they'll have, like, wee local eco-villages to live in. And local climate assemblies, that'll be fantastic for them trying to pay their mortgage, saying, I've cut some grass at this eco-village. Yeah, honestly. Under Humza's leadership, Scotland has this is a belter. Scotland has doubled down on the aim to reach net zero in the face of Conservatives cutting funding and Labour U-turning on all its climate and environmental policies in a shift to win Tory votes. How can you double down and try to reach net zero? How's that even possible? I can understand you double down if you go, I'm going to give £2 million to this fund. No, bugger it, I'll give you 4. That's doubling down, right? Or saying, we're going to save £1 million next year by doing something. And then a few months later saying, by the way, changed my mind, doubling down, 2 million. You're doubling down in zero. How's that? That's just a made up sentence, right? It doesn't mean, how can you put double, what is double zero? I know what it is. Fucking zero, right? So how can you double down? Tell you what, we'll triple down in zero. There you are. That'll out Humza. Absolute crackers. Scottish NHS is secure with record high investment at 19 billion, with resource funding more than doubling since SNP came into power. In brackets, in cash terms. Now this is brilliant because what they normally do is, when you get given more money by Westminster for NHS, they say, but that's not in real terms because there's inflation. So now, when they're talking about how much money they've put in, we suddenly just use it in cash terms and we don't think about inflation. So I don't know how much this 19 billion in difference between when they came into power in 2007, they've doubled it. I don't really know how much that's worth. And inflation in those, 17 years, you've doubled. It's not worth anywhere near double, is it? Might even be worth the same, but that's only when we're measuring other people who use the formula in real terms. But when we're measuring ourselves, we'll use cash terms. Humza Yousaf, a former health secretary himself, acutely understands the pressure of facing the health service. He was pissed at it. That's why additional funding has been pledged to tackle drug deaths, bit late son, clear waiting lists and improve mental health care. Aye. Pledged. You've pledged more funding. No, gave it. Right? So again, we're trying to look at how good you've done in your 12 months, and that's just another thing we've said we'll do. We've not done it yet, but we'll use that to tell you all how wonderful Humza is. The first months of office, Humza Yousaf's government launched a new 10-year cancer strategy to improve cancer survival and ensure equitable and accessible cancer care for all, alongside investing a further 9 million in cancer support services. 9 million over 10 years. Okay, a further 15 million has been invested to support mental health and address social isolation and loneliness in adults as part of our published strategy to improve the mental health and well-being of people across Scotland. I'd imagine all this money's already in the health service, right? So we're counting it twice. I'm really struggling now with this, so I'm going to go to the chase. There's a couple of belt. Now, they've actually done a section. Now, bear in mind that the Tory party are currently asking him questions on his, conflict of interest in the Middle East when he gave away £750,000 of taxpayers' money from a fund that he shouldn't have used for that, and he's getting questioned on his conflict of interest. You would think talking about the Middle East probably aftercared, son, right? Let's just leave that aside for a minute. No, they've done a whole section on how good Yousaf has been in the first 12 months on a leading voice for justice in the Middle East. Yep, they did. They went there. Humza Yousaf was a caring and compassionate in Scotland after the 7th of October attacks and has been a unifier while other politicians turned to divisive rhetoric in the wake of the violence. With his own loved ones trapped in Gaza, the First Minister proved himself a statesman of the highest standard with his calls for a restraint and a de-escalation of the conflict. From the early days of the Israeli-Hamas conflict, the First Minister was among the first world leaders to call for a ceasefire and set an example others soon followed. Yep, called for a ceasefire. That is only true if you consider a ceasefire as telling one boy in a fight to stop fighting the other, right? And I cannot believe that they're using this to try and convince the public that Humza has had a good first year in power. I will finish with their summary. The choice is clear. The First Minister himself has been clear. This has been a difficult year for the SNP. But in the face of the gravest personal and political challenges, Humza Yousaf has proven that the SNP is resolute in its mission to deliver for Scotland and build fairer, greener country we can all be proud of. The coming general election will be a referendum on the Tories' divisive politics. The SNP is emphatic in its drive to see Scotland Tory-free. The Conservatives have done enough damage and must be removed from office. And then he goes on to tell us that Labour's shite as well. So there you go. What an absolute crock of shite, right? We've had 19 minutes of bollocks. We've had 19 minutes of blaming Tories. We've had 19 minutes of telling us about stuff that we're going to do up the road. We've had 19 minutes of trying to give Humza credit for stuff that had nothing to do with Humza. I think my 10-minute video on Humza's 12 months is far better and more accurate. So I'll put that up here somewhere if I can, a wee link to that, and you can have a wee look at that. If you liked the video, give us a thumbs up. If you've not already done so, please consider subscribing to the channel, get involved with the comments below, and most importantly of all, unless you're Humza or his crappy spin doctors, that he pays £5 million a year for. Have a great day. Cheery bye now.